Okay, so we're live. Welcome to the latest in the Earn, Learn, Thrive LinkedIn Lives. And today we're going to be talking about niche. So niche is something which I do talk about quite a lot, really. And I've entitled this, What Does It Mean to Niche and How Can It Help Your Business? And my belief is that it can absolutely help your business because for me, niche is about getting known, if you like, for one thing. It doesn't mean that you can't do other things, but it is about giving people something that makes you memorable, that makes you the first person that they think of for that thing. And with me today, I have two people who I think have very clear niches. So we're going to talk a bit about their niche, how they came to niche, what they think of niching, and so on. So we have Camilla Walton from Cultivate English, and we have Lottie Galpin. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves because they'll probably do a better job of it than me. But just to say, if you are watching live, please do say hi in the comments, and any questions that you have or comments, please add them and we'll respond to them as we go along. And if you're watching later, if you can put hashtag replay, and again, any questions or comments, and we'll come back to them after the broadcast. So Lottie, would you like to kick off and tell us a bit about yourself and your niche?
Okay, brilliant. How much detail? Just the niche or the whole backstory?
Whatever you like.
Okay, all right.
We've got half an hour.
I guess a lot of people watching, I started out as an ELT teacher, and I did that for about 12 years in various different places. Then I moved into publishing, and I worked briefly for OUP before going freelance, and I did editing and writing. And then in the last sort of 3 to 4 years, I've moved more specifically into diversity, equity, and inclusion in ELT. So what that means is that I help ELT publishers and also freelancers to make inclusive materials. So materials that either represent the world, with all its beautiful diversity, or that are accessible to, to all students. So accessible so that, for example, dyslexic students can use them. And in terms of niche, DI is a niche in itself, but I do wear quite a lot of different hats within that niche. So I do training with publishers and freelancers. I do consultancy. I do bits of content reviewing, and also, from time to time, I'm still editing and writing. But while I'm doing that, I'm making sure that the materials are inclusive and, as accessible as they possibly can be.
Thank you, Lottie. I think that's a great example of what we might call a kind of umbrella niche. Because sometimes people say they don't want to niche because they still like variety. But I think that's a really good example, though, of how you can have loads of variety and still have a really strong niche.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
And Camilla, tell us about yourself and your niche.
Okay, well, I want to say first of all that I am first and foremost a garden designer, and my route into niche teaching has come about by a very convoluted and indirect route. It was never my intention. And lastly, I want to say that I love what I do. So I got into where I am now by starting out as a garden designer, and I graduated in 2016. That same year, I moved to Italy, and that's where I started to teach English, general English, and sadly had to sort of give up the garden design idea, living abroad. So I got more and more into my teaching, and then we moved to Holland at the same time as the pandemic, and I was getting more and more frustrated that I couldn't do my garden design. And I, one night, I had this revelation that what I could do is try and combine the two together. And that's where Cultivate English started. And it's been quite an exciting journey since then. Lots of mistakes made, a big learning curve for me personally, but now I'm very happy teaching English with a second language landscape architects and garden designers from mainly Italy and Spain, and I help them with their English communication skills. So it helps them to communicate with their English-speaking clients, mainly focusing on functional conversation, presenting skills, and also giving them the ability to discuss with their clients their designs and their concepts.
Yeah, no, lovely. And I think, you know, people may be kind of thinking, oh my goodness, that's really narrow. You know, what an incredibly narrow niche. But I know that you've said to me that, you know, when people come across you who are landscape architects and garden designers, they immediately kind of think that's the person for me.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think more often than not, they say to me, I had no idea that anything like this existed. And so I think that has perhaps been one of the biggest problems, is and the importance for marketing is huge, because it is so niche, and no one would necessarily even begin to look me up on the internet to try and find someone like me. So yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, because people are probably not going to search for you because they won't realize it exists. So you've kind of got to get that out there. But it's a very, very memorable thing. If you are in that category, you know, you're definitely going to feel that you would rather choose you than a generalist. And I think this is kind of what, you know, again, sort of why I think niche can be so helpful, because when we're sort of, I mean, we're not exactly competing, you know, but there are lots of English language coaches out there. And it is a very easy way, I think, to make yourself stand out. You know, so, yeah, great. Just to say hi to everybody who said hello. So Bhavna, Nicola, Karina, LinkedIn user, not sure who that is, Emma, Nala, Laurie, Cheryl, Peter. Lovely to see you all here. Yeah, if you have to give StreamYard permission, I think, to see your name, LinkedIn user, so that we know who you are. So we're talking about niche, and Lottie and Camilla have just kind of told us a little bit about their niche. So yeah, we started talking about this in a way, Camilla, but you know, Lottie as well. What difference do you think having a clear niche has made to your business?
Well, I think we've covered on a bit of it. It's less competitive, I think. So having such a niche, as far as I'm aware, there's only a few people doing what I do, and those people have their own specific niches as well. So there's nobody doing what I do with garden designers and landscape architects. It's really helped me to narrow down my marketing message as well. So to really help me focus on exactly what I want to say in my messages. I know what the problems are that they have, so I can, because I've been there, and I have a lot of empathy and know the problems they're facing when speaking to their clients. Even though I haven't done that myself to foreign clients, I know what it is they're going to have to explain, and how they explain it. So it's also helped me create a really unique course. So the course that I offer is unique. There's no one else doing that, and I know that because it's entirely kind of created by me, and it's changing and evolving as I go. So the more people I teach, the more it's refined. So it is a big learning curve. I'm learning all the time, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think it's helped me probably to raise my prices so that I'm not really competing against other general English teachers. I'm able to niche, and therefore, as a specialist, I'm able to raise my price. And for me, niching just makes it more interesting for me, because I love what I do. I love garden design. I love teaching. I love seeing the success that they make from me helping them. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Whole load of good points there, I think. What about you, Lottie?
Yeah, I mean, I think Camilla's covered sort of pretty much everything. I think it's definitely, I I wouldn't necessarily say it's easier to build a clear profile of who you are and what you're offering. So I think that ties into what you're saying about the marketing message. And I agree largely, you know, with pretty much everything you're saying. But I think also there's a luxury in it as well. It gives you a chance to really kind of specialize and learn about something that you're really interested in, you know, and to really build that knowledge. Whereas I think if you're working in quite a broad area, you know, you can certainly build your skills, but there's a lot to cover and a lot to learn. If you niche down, then, you know, you're really focusing on the types of things that you need to learn about.
No, absolutely. And actually, interestingly, it hadn't even really occurred to me when I invited you to, but, you know, Lottie, a lot of what you do is B2C, whereas everything that you do, Camilla, is sorry, the other way around, B2B. I mean, Lottie, you know, so you're working with publishers and big organizations a lot of the time, whereas you're working mostly with individuals, Camilla. So we can see that it can work for both of those approaches, and I think, you know, sometimes people feel it's only something for individual teachers, and that maybe as a writer or an editor it's not that applicable.
Yeah,
but
I think also that, you know, as we were chatting earlier with Lottie, I didn't realise her background, and we've both got completely different backgrounds. So I started in the profession I'm now trying to teach
yes,
communication skills in, whereas Lottie has started out with all those skills as a writer and a teacher first and foremost, and then niched. So it's just goes to show that anything's possible.
Yeah, totally. I think it's quite scary, you know, I think it is quite scary, the idea of niching, because you're worried that you're actually going to limit the amount of work you can get. But I've found it's actually the opposite. I mean, clearly when you're launching a new business, it will take time to kind of establish yourself and your identity, and that period can feel, you know, quite scary. But ultimately, I think it's more beneficial in terms of the amount of work you generate as well.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. And in fact, you know, thinking about my own business, you know, I started off very sort of broad. I mean, initially I was kind of life coaching anyone, you know, and then it kind of narrowed down to within ELT, because that's a field that I know very well. And then it kind of morphed into business and mindset coaching. And then I've kind of narrowed it down again now that I only work with freelancers. And every time I've narrowed it down, it's been a really good thing for my business, and I've got more work. So
no, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I mean, even, sorry, I'm totally interrupting, but even so, I like, even now I'm thinking, well, I want to niche down a bit more, you know, and I'm kind of identifying areas that I think I want to sort of go more in a direction of. So I think there's, you know, it's scary initially, but there's always scope to kind of keep niching down and keep finding your specialty, I think, in the same way you have.
Yes, and actually that doesn't necessarily have, you know, that can take away some of the fear as well, because sometimes people have this idea of, before I can get started, I have to be 100% clear about my niche. And actually sometimes, I mean, it's great if you can be, because then you just kind of get going. I mean, and I think, you know, you were, Camilla, and I think that, you know, that's great. But even if you're not, you might discover it as you go along by the kind of people who come to you. And that's really what happened with me. You know, I found that actually I was doing much more business coaching than I was life coaching. And so at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, actually, this is what people want, and I'm enjoying it, and I can do it. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You know, so your niche can find you.
Yes.
Definitely.
So a few more people who've said hi. Just Aditya, Monica, Nicola, Dara. You were the user. That's great. Vina, Francesca, thanks. Do you have any, if anybody who's watching live, if you have any questions, do pop them in the comments, and we'll try and address those questions as well. So you mentioned, like, sort of the, you know, the fear aspect of it. Do you think there are any disadvantages to having a niche?
I was thinking about this question. Sorry, Camilla, do you want to go first?
No, I'm happy for you to go.
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we came on. I really can't see any. Occasionally, you know, I might pine to just mark up some proofs, which is something I used to do a lot as an editor. But, you know, I still do aspects of that in my work, and there's still the variety there. So ultimately, I would say no.
I generally, I think it's no, but I think there are a few disadvantages. And I think one of them for me was not a teacher, not a materials writer, and I am not a marketeer either. And so that's kind of why I went to Rachel for help, because not being in business per se, I needed guidance, because marketing became such an important, or is such an important part of my business success, that has been honing down my messages has been so important for me. But that's me personally, that won't apply to everybody. And I think the other biggest advantage for me was the fact that all my materials are created from scratch, and that is that's quite time consuming. So I spend probably, I don't know, I can't imagine now, but far too long at the moment preparing all my lessons, because everything is unique, and it is tailor-made to each individual student. I am learning how there are aspects of what I teach which can be copied over to each client, especially when we're talking about generic functional language. But the thing I love is the fact that everyone is individual, and I suppose that is the biggest disadvantage for me. It's a time constraint, really, and but also I love it, so you've got to be prepared for that. So you know, we'll hopefully
and charge appropriately.
Exactly.
So, you know, I mean, the more tailor-made something is,
Yeah.
the more value there is in there. But I think you are discovering more and more, like, kind of what the core is that's common to everyone.
I've only been doing this a year now, so and I haven't been focusing on it for that long this year. So getting back into it at the moment, you know, it is time consuming, but I hope this time next year it'll be getting faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very, you know, important point about the marketing. But actually, I mean, I think, you know, everybody has to market.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's much easier to market when you have a clear niche.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, you mentioned this at the beginning, Camilla, but I'll kind of go over it again. You know, if you really, this is what I believe anyway, if you really understand at a deep level what the needs and problems and aspirations are of the people you want to work with, then the marketing becomes quite easy, because you just speak to those. Whereas if you're trying to attract everybody, then you tend to kind of end up attracting nobody, because everything's too bland and generic and everybody's saying the same thing, you know. So I think for me, niche is primarily in many ways about marketing, because it just makes it so much easier to have a message that people can hold on to and understand, if you like, about, you know, what it is that you do. So got a couple of questions. So Nicholas says, Camilla, do you run your courses online or face-to-face?
I'm doing them face-to-face. For me, that is my USP, I suppose, is the fact that, you know, that they
but
get
face-to-face online, no?
Yes, face-to-face online. Yeah, face-to-face online. I did do any asynchronous courses, but I'm planning to. So that's where I'm going. And so adding some sort of combination, I think, will be the way forward. Part face-to-face, part asynchronous.
Yeah, well, that kind of common core will work well, I think, asynchronous. And then Dara says, what marketing channels do you guys use? Do you use direct sales?
Marketing channels? What's a marketing channel again?
Well, I think what he means is, you know, are you using social media? Are you cold messaging people? Are you using, like, personal contacts?
For me, it's LinkedIn first and foremost. LinkedIn. I'm going to try at some point in the future to go to Instagram. I think that might be quite a good market for me, but I'm very hesitant at the moment before I've got everything sorted with LinkedIn. When I get more confident with my marketing, I'll probably go over there for a little bit, but I'm not sure. I think word of mouth, so getting business through your students is probably a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you're following up your course with how can I improve this, maybe giving them your business card so that they can then spread the word easily for you. And also testimonials are huge, and that's a big thing. Finally, I think that I've got contacts in the garden design world and landscape architect world, and so using them is something again I'm going to do more of to try to expand my reach.
Yeah, just kind of getting in front of the right people.
Yeah,
isn't it? I think. And what about you, Lottie?
Yeah, I would say primarily LinkedIn, but I think kind of anything you do is a form of marketing. If it's writing an article or a blog or, giving a talk at a conference, all of those things are marketing, aren't they? But I think a bit like you, Camilla, I'm thinking about launching some courses next year, some video courses. So I'm contemplating getting onto Instagram as well to kind of look at a slightly different audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really personally, I always advise, and I'm glad to see you guys are doing it, starting with one platform where you're pretty sure that your ideal client is there and kind of really getting to grips with that, rather than thinking I've got to do all of the platforms. And, it's just exhausting and isn't necessarily even going to work because they may well not be on those platforms. But also, it's all about connecting. At least the kind of marketing that I teach. I mean, I don't teach direct sales or cold calling. I teach organic marketing, which is about kind of attracting the clients to you, basically. Horses for courses and all that, but that isn't something I feel particularly comfortable with. And I guess the people who come to me feel the same, you see what I mean? Or they go to somebody else. And I think that now I've lost my thread now, but yeah, so I think what you were saying, Lottie, I think is absolutely right. Social media is always probably going to be a big one unless you have a local business. But I do think thinking about all the other ways you can kind of get in front of people and use other people's audiences, so writing articles for magazines or giving talks or, all of that can have quite a big impact if they're the right audiences. It can, be a big sort of have much more impact, if you like, than a social media post.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and any other questions from anybody who's watching live, do feel free to put them in there. I have a question for you two though, which is so do you have any suggestions from your experience or from other people that you know about how people can find or decide on a niche?
I would say, and it's a teeny bit cheesy, but I would say something you're really passionate about or something you really care about, something you can put your heart into, because if you're focusing on it, then you really do need to care about it and then, be fascinated by it and want to learn about it and want to convey what you've learned as well. So I think that's important. I'd also say, and this is going to sound a little bit, I don't know, arrogant maybe, but something that you're actually good at as well. So it's no good, I might love making pottery, but if I'm not a particularly good potter, then there's no point launching a business as a niche as a potter. So I think it's that combination of somewhere where you've got skills to offer, but something that you're also passionate about.
Yeah. I would. That's on my list of things to say as well. Is do something you enjoy, do something you're passionate about, because that's where your strengths are, and that will shine through as well when you're teaching. I would say also do your research before you start, and you've got to really understand the problems you're trying to help. So that really comes down to, again, what are you good at? What's your experience? What have you had experience of in your life that you can then bring to the fore. You could, rather than choose a profession to go down, like some medicine or architecture or whatever it is, you could choose possibly a target audience if you want to help people, particularly in France or Germany or Spain or Portugal. So you go down that route. And also perhaps by age. I mean, I absolutely didn't hesitate when I chose to teach professionals, because I have taught children before, and it's not my thing. And I wanted to teach particularly people with an advanced knowledge of English. So most of my students I start with are around the high B2 level. And I find that is where a lot of students hit a sort of a deadline, and it's with help they need to then cross over to more advanced level English.
The plateau.
A plateau, yeah. So that is an area I love. I love teaching sort of advanced level. So again, you have to choose what level you want to teach at. So once you've considered all those things, if you've got something you're passionate about, then you want a win-win. And I think I would suggest just having a go, just starting. Not going, and maybe, I mean, when I started teaching my first student, I had no idea what to expect. I had no plan at all. I went with the flow. I asked her which areas she wanted to look at more closely, and that is how I started. So.
Which brings us back to, like letting your clients tell you what your niche is. Because actually, I think we can learn a lot from listening to them. No, I agree, and I totally agree about what both of you have said. For me anyway, I think if you're going to run a business, it can be hard, it can be demoralizing at times, it can be quite a lot of work if your heart isn't in it. I mean, I spoke to a potential client a couple of days ago, and she had been advised, you've got to go into business English, that's where the money is, and that may be true, but this is quite a young person who had no experience of business, wasn't remotely interested in it, whereas this person had quite a strong academic background and had done an MA, and so academic English to me seems to be a far more obvious fit, because they were really interested in that, they understand it, they would know what the students were struggling with. So I mean, unless money really is sort of you're so sort of key, I mean, there's nothing wrong with money, don't get me wrong, but unless you're so motivated by that you're prepared to kind of overlook the fact that you're really not very interested in what you're doing, and you're willing to kind of learn loads about something that you know nothing about, that doesn't feel like a good fit for me. And I think you need to have a good fit, I think.
And I think so, I mean, it's worthwhile taking time to really consider what you enjoy teaching, because it may be that your niche becomes teaching reading skills only. It could be a niche like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be you don't have to necessarily think about who you're teaching first. It could be, what do you enjoy doing the most? It could be conversational English, and that is a niche in itself. You could take that one step further and teach conversational English to, I don't know, people who are in the tourism industry or whatever.
I mean, absolutely, because people do tend to think about niche as being who, and often it is who, but it can sometimes be about the result that you produce, or it can be about a problem that you solve, or it can be about the methodology that you have. I mean, I'm thinking like Sandy Millen has developed a very nice course. I mean, I know somebody who's done it, so I know it's good, which is preparing people for Delta slowly, and it's for people who are busy, have families, maybe that bit older, and they can't do an intensive, they don't want to do an intensive preparation course, they want to do it slowly and have help along the way, and that's a brilliant example, I think, of a niche, and it is kind of thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
you know, rather than, you know, because Delta preparation in itself isn't really a niche, or at least it's not a very niche niche.
But then that makes your job straight away much easier, because you can know exactly where you've got to go and do your further research, and then you're narrowing down. You know, like it might seem to be, well, why would I close off all those other avenues? But actually, you can't reach everybody. You know, you just can't reach everybody. So you might as well start niching first. I just think it's a much better way of finding students. You know, what is your?
And
I think.
Go on.
No, I think as well, because I'm thinking about the scariness of niche. I think, you know, you can start by narrowing some of those things down slowly. So, okay, I only like teaching adults, so I will teach adults. And then you look at the different things you like teaching adults, and slowly but surely you kind of niche it down. It doesn't have to be something you instantly know. It doesn't have to be, it's a bit of a jump, but it doesn't have to be a huge, scary jump. It can be something you do slowly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mohammed's saying, I love this slow approach. Wonder if this slow approach might work for IELTS too. Possibly, yes. You know, there might well be a selection of students. I mean, the thing is, so many people are taking IELTS that by narrowing your selection, you're not necessarily, well, in fact, you're almost certainly not narrowing your options. You might actually be increasing them, because then you would stand out as the person who doesn't do intensive but does the opposite.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice for IELTS, because it's a big learning curve, isn't it? IELTS for a lot of people. So it might be nice to kind of gently approach it, or potentially, you know, start with younger students and slowly kind of start to feed those skills in, so that when they reach the age that they might want to go and study overseas, or you know, for whatever reason they're doing their IELTS, they've then got all those skills kind of built in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of the half hour, so it only remains me to say thank you so much, Camilla and Lottie, for joining with me in this conversation, and thank you so much to everybody who has been watching live. And if you're watching later, do feel free to add any questions or comments, and we'll come back and take a look. I will be writing my newsletter, which will go out next week, about niche, which will be partly based on this conversation, but I'll be putting other tips and ideas in there as well. So if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, then do so straight away. And thanks very much, everybody, again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.